theyeshiva.net.
Okay, this mimer in Likkutei Torah of this week's Parshas Pinchas, you have it on page 154, yeah? On the top, Tzav B'nai Yisrael, was said by the Alter Rebbe, by the Baal HaTanya, Shabbos Mevorchim of Tovkuf Ayin Beis, the middle of the summer of the year Tovkuf Ayin Beis, which would be 1812. Most people, when they would write the Maimarim in those days, they wouldn't write dates. That's why it doesn't say dates. But the Tzemach, the grandson, he was very makpid on dates. So when he quotes Maimarim, he often writes the date. That's how we know a lot of the dates of the Maimarim. So in one of his writings, he quotes this Maimar and he says, B'dibur HaMaschil es Karboni Lachmi Tovkuf Ayin Beis. And somewhere else he writes Tovkuf Ayin Beis Mevorchim of Es HaKeves Echad Tasav HaBerker Es HaKeves Hasheni Tasav B'Nar Baya. But there he adds one more detail which makes this Maimar very special in one particular regard. In the Lashon of the Tzemach Tzedek, he says over there in the headline, Siyum al Torahs Beladi, the end of all the Torahs of Liadi. What he means by this is as follows. The Baal HaTanya lived in a little town. He was born there and he lived there for most of his life, a little town called Liozhna. Liozhna is a little town in Belarus, Belarus, at the border of Russia and Lithuania. It was called then White Russia. Today it's called Belarus. He was arrested a few times. After his second arrest, he moved from Liozhna and moved to another city not far from there called Liadi, another little town, Liadi. In Liadi he lived towards the end of his life. Napoleon declared war on Russia. Napoleon Bonaparte declared war on Russia in July of 1812. I think it was Yud Beis Tamuz or Yud Gimel Tamuz, Tovkuf Ayin Beis, 1812. The summer of 1812, he crossed into Kovna, which is Lithuania, and he began his major attack on Russia. It was one of the biggest attacks in history of the world until that point. 600,000 troops, which in 1812 was unprecedented. Napoleon was certain that he will be able to take Russia, just like he took most of Europe. He was a man who ruled over Europe. And he didn't take into consideration a few factors, including something that Hitler also didn't take into consideration when he attacked Russia, also in June 1941, and that's the Russian winter. Number one, and also Russia never loses. Russia only retreats. It's so big. In Russia you could fit in the whole continent of Europe and the whole continent of America, and you still have plenty of space. So in Russia, it's very hard to win the Russians. They just retreat. They just go back and back. And also the Russians, they have a certain character that comes out sometimes in war. So Napoleon made a fatal mistake, and this defeated not only his whole army, but ultimately he was destroyed as a result, and that was the end of Napoleon. The Alter Rebbe had very negative feelings towards Napoleon. The whole mice, it's not for now, but he had very, very serious negative feelings towards Napoleon. And he said he will not remain under the same roof with Napoleon, meaning he will not be in a city where Napoleon rules. So when Napoleon came into Russia, and he heard about it, so he decided he's going to leave. Liadi, where he lived, Liadi was on the route of Napoleon coming in, because he came in from the west. So he came in Lithuania, Belarus, Russia, and then he moved deeper and deeper into Russia until he took Moscow. So the Baal HaTanya escaped. When did he escape? He escaped in the end of the month of Av, which was only 2 months, a month and a half after the war broke out. He escaped from Liadi, and his route went deep into Russia and ultimately to the Ukraine, South Ukraine. He escaped mamish in front of Napoleon's troops. The Mittler Rebbe, his son, after he passed away, writes a whole letter, exactly the journey of his father. If you compare it to the maps of the war and how it went, you see from the Mittler Rebbe's letter, you could know exactly what happened in the war, because they parallel each other. He ran away right before the end of Av, before Elul Tovkuf Ayin Beis, 1812. And then he was on the run. He was on the run for Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and for the next few months. And he ran deeper and deeper into Russia. Ultimately, he ended up in southern, east-south Ukraine. And because of the horrible winter, the Baal HaTanya fell ill, and he passed away the next winter, Chavdala Tevis, Tovkuf Ayin Gimel. So the Tzemach Tzedek is saying that this was basically the last Maimer that he said in Liyadi, because this was Shabbos Mevarchim Av, and already after that he ran away. In many ways, this was it's not the last Maimer he ever said. He said Torah afterwards, but this was the last Maimer that he said, so to speak, as a Rebbe settled in his own place with his own Chassidim, because after that it was already everything was on the road. There was fewer people. So in many ways, you can even call it the last Maimer of the Alter Rebbe. Again, it wasn't the last Torah he ever said. He lived another few months, and he said Torah, this Torah that we have, and Torah that he wrote. But this was the last established, settled Maimer said on Shabbos to the Olam that came in a state of Harchava, relatively speaking. This is it. So in many ways, this has a lot of historic and spiritual significance, because it's a Tzedek's Lashon is Siyum al Torah's Baladi. This is the end of all the Torahs of the era of Liadi, which really the era of Liadi was the most, relatively speaking, in the Baal HaTanya's life, it was the most calm era, relatively speaking, relative to the years before. It was a huge oilam. There were thousands and thousands of disciples. The opposition of his opponents relaxed somewhat. I mean, not completely, but it relaxed somewhat. And the oilam was already huge. And there was much more menuchas hanefesh. Relatively, he had more menuchas hanefesh, but ultimately he had to leave it. He wasn't there many years. He was there, and then he had to run away, but he ran away because of Napoleon. So this is the Siyam ala Torah's Beladi, and it's an aposik in Pinchas, and it's a pasuk that we say every day.
When you quote the Tzemach Tzedek, you're saying Siyam
al Torah's Beladi.
But L'chodesh Av, as a Kevesecha Tasu Eloker, he juxtaposes his mentioning Chodesh Av as a Kevesecha. Is he trying to give us a hint to the two Batei Mikdash?
That I don't know. Okay. That I don't know. Could be. That I don't know. Now this pasuk we say every day in the Karbonis before Shachris, because we say Karban HaTamid, at least to many Kehillas they say the Karban HaTamid every day. And when you open a Siddur, you remember the Psukim read, Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe Leimer, Tzav b'nei Yisrael v'amarta aleim. Speak to the Jews and tell them, Es karboni, my offering, lachmi, my bread, leishai, for my fire, reach nichoichi, my smell, my aroma, tishmeru, you should preserve, lahakriv libe moyadai. Offer it in its right time. V'amarta lahem zeh ha'isha shetakrivu l'Hashem. What is this fire? What is this food that you should put on the fire? Kvasim neishana smimim shnayim layoyim oila summit. 2 sheep every day as a carbon oila, every single day, perpetually. 1 sheep in the morning, 1 sheep in the afternoon, and then he goes off to the meal offering, the grain of Asiris, he goes off to other details. This is known as Parshas HaTamid and Parshas Pinchas, the Tzivuy, the mitzvah to bring every day 2 sheep, a sheep in the morning and a sheep in the afternoon, as a carbon oila, known as the carbon tamid, which really became the source, according to the Gemara, at least one opinion for Shachris and Mincha, because Shachris is a tamid in the morning and Mincha is the tamid in the afternoon, and this was done the first thing in the morning. The first carbon was the carbon tamid in the morning, and the last carbon was the carbon tamid in dusk in the afternoon, following which there would be no more carbonis. The opening and all karbanos was sandwiched in between the 2 tmidim. These are the psukim on which this maimer focuses. So it says, Lahavin koifel beis pa'amim v'amarta. To understand, first of all, the redundancy that it says twice v'amarta, v'gam shinui lashon. Besides that, you have to also understand the shinui lashon, the deviation, the change in the lashon. So there's 2 details that he's addressing. First of all, it says twice v'amarta lahem, it seems redundant. To quote the full pasuk, so you'll understand the question. Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe Leimer. Tzav es b'nei Yisrael. Command the Jewish people. V'amarta aleim. And you should tell them. Okay, that itself is a redundancy already. Could have said Tzav es b'nei Yisrael and just say it. He says Tzav es b'nei Yisrael. V'amarta aleim. And tell them. What should you tell them? Es karboni lachmi liisha rechni choichi tishmuru lakriv libe moyadoi v'amarta lahem. Again, v'amarta, you just said, command the Jews and tell them 1 sentence, tell them everything. No, 1 v'amarta and then a second v'amarta, you start over. Whenever you see that in Chumash, the ears have to perk up because there's some message here. That's number 1. Number 2, v'gam shini loshen d'ksiva shetakrivu uksiva sakeves echatas loshen asiya. Another change. the beginning he says, Zeh isha asher takrivu lashem. This is the carbon, the fire that you should offer, bring close. In other words, this action is called takrivu. Nu, so later you should say, Sakeves echad, takriv baboiker, Sakeves hasheni takriv. No, suddenly it becomes tasa. He could have said in the beginning also tasa. Zeha isha asher tasu, or at the end takrivu. In other words, this action is first defined as takrivu, bringing close, and later defined as tasa, action. V'gam, a third shinoi.
Plural and singular.
That's the next one. Takrivu loshen rabim, v'tasa loshen yachid. Takrivu, the plural, tasa in the singular. If you're saying Zeh Isha takrivu because you're speaking to Klal Yisrael, everybody, so you should say Sakeves echad tasu v'aboiker, not one person, tasu, all of you. No, because this is a mitzvah on the tzibur, not a mitzvah on one person. The whole Klal Yisrael had to do this. They had representatives, the people in the Beis Hamikdash, the Koyanim did it for them. But this was a mitzvah on everybody to do. And everybody had to give money for this, machzas hashekel, as a taxes to pay for these sheep. How'd they pay for the sheep? Every Jew gave a taxes every year to pay for all these offerings, because these were public, communal offerings, called karbonos tzibur. So that's why it says takrivu. So why later does it say ta'aseh sakeves echad tasu? Who are you speaking to? Are you addressing one, or you're addressing everybody? And even if you're addressing everybody, you can address everybody as one. Klal Yisrael is loshen yachid. Klal Yisrael, one. But then say sakeves takriv loshen. Three questions. Number one, V'amarta twice. Number two, takrivu versus tasa. Number three, loshen yachid versus loshen rabin. Well, Inyan, who the explanation in all of this is based, Kamayim Razal, based on a medrash kol makom shenemar Tzav, who miyad l'doiris. Chazal say in medrash Rabbah Bamidbar, Parshas Zayin, wherever it says the word Tzav, doesn't just say tell the Jewish people. It says the word Tzav. It means it's for now and it's l'doiris. It's an intergenerational communication. According to this, you can explain the redundancy in the word amira. V'amarta lehem twice. Why? V'amarta lehem miyad. One is something you should say now. V'amarta lehem for right now. This refers to the karbanos that they had to do during the Beis Hamikdash and the Mishkan. So therefore, it relates right now. Miyad. V'amarta lehem, you should tell the Jewish people as karbani lachmi li'isharech nechechet ishmer lakli b'moedah. Then there's a new v'amarta. What's the second v'amarta? V'amarta lem hainu l'doides shetiknu tefillah keneget midden. The second v'amarta is for future generations. After the Beis Hamikdash, there is also the carbon tamid, but now it doesn't look like a sacrifice of an animal. It basically looks like prayer, tefillah. So there's two v'amartas. V'amarta lem zeh, the first v'amarta is es karbani lachmi li'isharech nechoichi tishmeru l'akli b'moyadoi. That's the physical carbon brought in the physical Mishkan in the Beis Hamikdash. That's v'amarta number one. V'amarta lem, but there's another v'amarta, because it opens up with tzav. Tzav means miyad u'ledoiris. If it's miyad u'ledoiris, there's two tzivuyim. One is for now, which will also continue for hundreds of years. And one is L'doiris, which will continue even after hundreds of years. Still there'll be V'amarta lehem. What's V'amarta lehem? Zeha isha asher takrivu l'Hashem kvasim neishana shmim v'shnayim lo'em elasama. This refers also to tefillah, which is keneged the karbanos. V'hinei tzarich lahavin. Here we have to understand. So he answered the first question already. But now we have to understand. Eicha tefillah keneged midin shein kvasim b'nei shana. V'atfili bakashas rachimim. V'eichi tmuras hakarbon. Where in the world, who decided, where did anybody come up with this idea that davening somehow substitutes a sacrifice of an animal? I mean, you can't get two experiences that are more remote from each other. How is tefillah keneged midden? First of all, it's midden had to do with sheep. And not only that, kvasim b'nei shana, sheep that were in the year old. In other words, there's a certain age. Where do you have all of this in davening? It's a sheep with a particular age, b'nei shana. Tefillah is bakashas rachimim. Tefillah is basically you're talking to Hashem and you're asking, you're requesting, you're beseeching, you're asking for compassion. Ve'echi tmuras hakarbon. How does this tefillah, bakashas rachimim, substitute the sacrifice of a sheep within a year? Gam lahavin. Also, we have to understand mashakasav bekarbonis reich nichayach. By karbonis, there's a term that you don't have anywhere with all other mitzvahs. Hashem doesn't say put on tefillin. Reach nichayach la'Hashem. L'chsaftam al mezuzah is beisecha. Mezuzahs also can have a smell. No, only by karbonis. Like right here, does it say? Reach nichoichi tishmeru. It has a psar. Reach nichoich means a wonderful smell, a wonderful aroma. Vos epis. Gabi noyach ksiv. Vayorech Hashem es reach nichoich. Eze nachas ruach umereich hakabanas. Can we understand what's exactly this pleasure, this delight that comes from the smell of carbon? The fact that it smells, that we know. But that's not what we're talking about. So psareach nichoyach that's created, vos epis, and you already have it by noyach. So you see this theme of reach nichoyach by karbonis. Acha'inyanu, the explanation in all of this is kihine noida, it's known Shetachlis Yedidas Haneshama Lo'olam Haza L'slabish beguf benefesh habahamis Yedidat Tzorech Aliyahi. Kedarkai, he starts redrawing the maps all over again. We have to discuss the purpose of life, right? We go back to the beginning. The purpose of the soul coming down into this world, clothing itself in a body and an animal soul, is Yeridat Tzorech Aliyah. Yeridat Tzorech Aliyah is an expression in Masechta Makos about a person going down a ladder, going up a ladder, but he uses this term in the cosmic sense that the Yerida of life, of the soul into the world, is Tzorech Aliyah. It's for the sake of an ascent. What is this Aliyah that the soul experiences by coming down? V'hinei koidim shenivra olam hayahu shmoi belvat. Pirkei the Rebbe Lezer says, it's a quote from Pirkei the Rebbe Lezer, which is one of the Midrashim of the Tanaim, Rebbe Lezer ben Hyrcanus. Ad shelei nivra ha'olam hayahu shmoi belvat. Before the world was created, there was he and his name. Only him and his name. Hu u'shmoi belvat. Him and his name. What is the meaning of this? Before creation, hu u'shmoi. Shmoi begematria ratzon. The Baal HaTanya says Shmoi is Shin Mem Vav, is 346. It's the same numerical value as the word Ratzon. Ratzon Reish is 200, Tzaddik is 90, 90 and 50 is 140, so it's 340, and Vav is 6. So Shmoi is 346, Ratzon is 346. Why? Because Hu Shmoi Belvad, Hu is he, and Shmoi represents 346, which is his will, his desire. Shehu Mekoir HaHashpa V'chiyus HaNevrayim. His Ratzon is the source of all the Hashpa, the flow, Hashpa means flow, and the energy of the creations. Why is Ratzon the Makir of all Hashpa? Because it ascended in his undefined will, meaning Ritzonei HaPashat, to be a Melech Shmoi Nikra. We say in Adonai Olam Hashem Malach, B'terem Kol Yitzur Nivra. He was a king before. La'eis Natsa V'cheftzei Koil. You remember Adonai Olam? From childhood. La'eis Nasa V'cheftzei Koil. When everything was created through his Ratzon, his Chefetz, Azai Melech Shmoi Nikra. He gets a new name. And that name is Melech. Adonai Olam Hashem Malach. It's a contradiction. First you tell me he was Hashem Malach B'terem Kol Yitzur Nivra, before anything was created. But there wasn't Melech Shmoi Nikra. La'eis Nasa V'cheftzei Koil. When everything was made with his desire, Azai Melech Shmoi Nikra. Now finally you can have the title Melech, because you can't be a Melech if you don't have a people, if you don't have a nation. The expression Rabbeinu B'chai is Ein Melech B'loyam. So b'meila, the whole source of everything comes from Ratzon. Allah b'Ritzaynai, that he wanted to be Melech Shmoi Nikra. He wanted to have the Shem Melech. If you want to have a Shem Melech, you need to create. So it all started with a Ratzon Pashat, with a desire to be a Melech. Liyos Melech Shmoi Nikra. And that's why Ratzon is the source of everything. His will. Well, Kamaima, we say in Baruch Shamar, what do we say? At the end of Baruch Shamar, Yachid, you remember? We'll praise you, B'shvach, the Gadol, Chabecha, Varchom, Nelicha, V'nasku, Shimcha, Malkeinu, Lekeinu. Yachid, Chei ha'elamim melech, B'shum b'cham f'rad at Shema Gadol. Literally it means, Yachid, he's singular. Chei ha'elamim, the life of the world. Melech, B'shum b'cham f'rad. But he teaches us, Yachid, Chei ha'elamim. It's two separate nekudas. Hu levada Yachid u'miyuchad. Mitzad himself, he's one. The chiyus of the worlds comes because he wanted to be a melech. So we say in Baruch Shamar, Yachid, you're a Yachid. Where does it happen that you also become the chiyus of the olam? In other words, you define your energy as one that will give life to all the worlds. That's because you wanted to be a melech. The kodim shenivra olam. Now we go back to the medrash. Before the world was created, hayahu shmoi bilvad. What was he? What was there? He and his name alone. Meaning, shebchines malchusa yiseklula be'ein sof baruch hu mamash. His malchus, which is shmoi, was submerged in the infinite one. V'nikra oirein sof baruch hu sh'or v'ziv. In Nister, this is called the light of the Ein Sof. His malchus is called his name in Medrash, his malchus in Chazal, and his oir in Kabbalah. So before the world was created, there was he, but there was also Shmoi. But it was Bilvat, it was alone, nothing else. Because the Shmoi, the name, was included in who? It was Kol and Ein Sof. That's his name, it's his Ratzon, it's his malchus. And that is called Oir Ein Sof, and the Oir is the light. The light was submerged in the Moir. Moir is the luminary, the source of the light. The Pasuk in Bereshis calls the sun Moir HaGadol, the big luminary. From there comes the light. So Moir is the source of the Oir. The Oir is in the Moir. What happens after creation? The Oir extends, it spreads out, from the word lehitpashet, to spread out, hispashtus. Lahachiyos hanivroyim, to give life to all creations. May ayin mamish liyesh, mamish from nothing to something. Beseder aishtalshlus hamadregas, with a whole order of evolution, of levels, derech ila va'olo, with an antecedent and an effect, until this physical world, which becomes a physical being and it's completely separated. What do we mean completely separated? You do not see in this world any link to anything divine, anything beyond. This world is a completely self-contained universe. You could walk the face of this planet comfortably, define yourself as an atheist, and win a Nobel Prize. And it works. Because this is Yesh HaGashmi v'Davar Nifrid Mamash. V'hu yiride g'doyle l'gabi ha'oir v'aziv shayakol bein in Sof Baruch. This is the first Yerida and the biggest Yerida. The biggest Yerida is the light, the way it was submerged in the Ein Sof, to the way the light emerges and descends. It's mispashet to give chiyus to the world. That's a tremendous Yerida in the Oir, in the Shmoi, in the Ratzon, in the Malchus. The Tachlis HaYerida, on this we speak about the Yerida Tzarech Aliyah. The Yerida doesn't begin with the soul, it begins with Hashem's Oir. And the Tachlis of this Yerida is Liyos miyesh la'ayin, to convert the Yesh back into Ayin, Sheyiyah hayesh gamkin batal v'nichlo bein Sof Baruch Hu mamash, that the Yesh should also become nullified and submerged in the light of the infinite one mamash. V'hi ha'aliyah ha'ikris, and this is the biggest aliyah. Sha'aleh ha'nemer, on this aliyah it was said, Livyason zeh yatzarta l'sachik boy. You created the Leviathan fish to play with it, to laugh with it. It's a very interesting pasuk in Baruch Hidavshi. Livyason zeh yatzarta l'sachik boy. You created the Livyason as a toy. You l'sachik is schok, laughter. You play with it, you laugh with it, you toy with it. The only thing that can create laughter, joy, humor above is the bittul hayesh la'ayin. As the yesh goes back to ayin. Why? I'm going to read a few lines and explain. Sheishavus me'ayin la'yeshu inyan habriya. Creation is the transformation from nothingness into somethingness. K'moshakos of the pasuk in Mishlei, hachachma me'ayin timotze. Shlomo Melech says it as a question, he uses it as a statement. The Melech says, Chachma, where are you going to find Chachma? What, do you walk in the street and you find Chachma like you find a pen? Where are you going to find Chachma? It's not something you can find. Either you got it or you don't got it. He teaches v'hachachma me'ayin timotze. Chachma emerges. It's found from ayin. Hachachma ireishis hagilui mishtalshlos oilamas. Chachma is the first glimmer of consciousness. The first glimmer, the reishis hagilui, the first revelation of the order of the world starts Chachma. So that's the first time the Ohr emerges from its womb. To be Mechayin Ibrahim, the first thing is Chachma. So it's called Me'ayin. It's Me'ayin Liyesh. That's Bria. Mashenkin is Havas Me'yesh La'ayin. But to create from Yesh Ayin, Hu Davar Chadash. This is novel. V'shinui Ateva. This is a change of nature. V'ikir Haschoik V'hachedva. And the main mechanism, the main characteristic that makes up joy and laughter is mishinoi v'hischachos, is from change and newness. Kederech she'oisen lefnei malachim v'sarim. If you'll see, this is how they entertain kings and princes. And he lived in a time when monarchs ruled Europe, they ruled the planet, and they always wanted to be entertained. How do you entertain malachim and sarim? Ezeu shinoi v'hischachos. You need a change and you need something new. L'simchos chayk. This generates by them joy and laughter. All different types of shticks and circuses, and some of them cruel, some of them noble. But the point is, they need a psashinui, something abnormal, irregular, to generate simcha and chayk. And he says, U'kemoy king siv, the same post in the same kapitel, U'techadesh pnei adama, yismach Hashem b'masav. You'll renew the face of the earth, and then God becomes joyous in His creation. The same Barchi Nafshi, Tehillim Kuf Daled, Usechadesh Pnei Adama, and then you have Yismach Hashem b'masav. V'nikra Levyasan. Why is this called Levyasan? Ke Levyasan hu lashon chibur. The word Levyasan means connection. Kamoi v'yilavu alecha v'yishar sucha b'Parshas Kairach. The Leviim are called Leviim because yilavu alecha. Hapam yilave ishi elai. My husband will accompany me. He'll connect to me. V'yilavu elecha. The Leviim will accompany you and serve you. Hanilvim al Hashem l'sharsei. They accompany God. V'kachu inyan chibur v'dibu kayesh la'ayin aydei habit. And that's why Levyasan represents the link between Yesh and Ayin, through the bittul of the Yesh to the Ayin, and that's why Levyasan creates joy. Levyasan zeyat sarta l'sachik boy, because that's the bittul of the Yesh la'ayin, which creates the greatest simcha, the greatest chet. What's the nekuda being explained here? Two points. Number one, the process going down, and number two, the process going up. The process of Yerida, and then the process of Aliyah. What is the process of Yerida? The process of Yerida is that before creation, Hu Ushmai Bilvad. There was He and His name. What's Pshat? You could say before creation was Him. What's Him and His name? The definition of a name is that which other people identify you by. If you're living alone on an island, you don't need a name. When you talk to yourself, you don't call yourself by name, right? You don't say, David, Yossel, Yankel, Meir, you want to eat breakfast, you want to get up. You talk to yourself internally. But if I want to talk to you, I can't talk to you from inside yourself, right? I call you by your name. So your name is the ability, it's that which allows me to communicate to you, to identify. Or if I want to talk about you, how do I talk about you? You could talk about yourself without your name. From within. You can also say I if you're talking to somebody else. But if I want to talk about you, I need your name. Yeah, so you say Pliny, Almighty, this person, this. The whole Torah is that way, yeah? You tell us Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, you need a name. On a more abstract level, but it's the same nekuda. The name is not only your name, Yankel Finkelstein. The name represents your reputation, your name. Keser Shem Tov. What type of name do you have? Every person has a name. A name doesn't mean by the whole world. A name could be by your own wife, by your children, by your siblings, by your friends, in your community. What name do you have? What name do you have? How do I know you? How do we know you? When I hear this name, what comes up in me? What comes up in me? Something wonderful or maybe not. but something comes up in me. So your name is basically how you're known by somebody else. How you're called by somebody else, how you're connected to you, somebody else connects to you, somebody else knows you. That's the name. So what's pshat? Actually, nivra ha'olam hayahu u'shmoi bilvad. What shmoi? Where was their name? Hayahu bilvad. Before creation it was Hashem. And then Bereishus bara Elokim as Hashemayim v'sa'aretz, he decided to create a world. So the Pirkei that Rebbe Lezer should say in Perek Gimel, actually nivra ha'olam hayahu. It was only him. What's the chiddush of this medrash? What do you think was before the world was created? Him and what else? And the Big Bang? Hayahu. So he says, no, Hayahu u'shmoi bilvad. It was him and it was his name. So the Baal HaTanya is explaining what this means. Shmoi represents the koyach within him that will one day become the consciousness of creation. But at this point, there's no creation yet. So what is it? It's completely part of who he is. A mashal for this. A teacher, which he gives in another mimer, a teacher, we learned it in one of the mimarim of Shlach. You have a teacher, when he was explaining about Igulim and Yosher. You have a teacher. He's a brilliant, brilliant teacher. And he's giving a shiur. And he knows the material, he knows it very, very deep. He's, let's say, teaching Mishnayos to a 9-year-old boy, or Gemara to a 16-year-old boy, or a Pasuk Chumash to a 20-year-old or a 7-year-old. And he starts learning the Mishnah. And the person doesn't understand. So he starts explaining, and explaining more, and giving illustrations, and giving mashalim. Where were all these words before? All these mashalim, all these stories, all these illustrations, where were they? He didn't take them out of some magical container. He suddenly took it out. It was all inside of him. But did he have it organized before? No, it was all in potential. He understands it very well. Because he understands it very well, he has within himself all the oisius to be able to communicate it. But it's not revealed because he doesn't need it. He gets it. Suddenly he's sitting with a student and the student needs information. He says, let me tell you this story, let me give you this mashal, let me give you this illustration, let me explain it this way, let me explain it that way. Before this, all the oisius were there, but they were there in a state of potential. All of creation is divine energy. Where was this divine energy before? The divine energy was in him. It wasn't conspicuous because it was completely submerged in him. All the oisius that create the world, it was all inside of him. It goes even deeper. It starts with the ratzon. The beginning of the world is ratzon, desire. Everything comes from desire. Looks like by us. Everything starts with desire. All energy begins with desire, ratzon. Ratzon is oisius sinner, the first channel of energy. Desire. He wanted to be a melech. He wanted to have a relationship. He wanted to have a bria. This was all in him. This is shmoi. Shmoi b'gematria ratzon. The ratzon for the world was inside. And the ratzon which translates into chiyus, that was also inside. It was all hu u'shmoi bilvad. So where was Malchus? This is the explanation. Adonai Olam Asher Malach b'terem kol yitzur nivra. Before there was a bria, there was still shmoi. There was the koyach of Malchus was there. La'eis nasa v'cheftzei kol azai melech shmoi nikra. So today when you say Adonai Olam, you'll understand, yeah? There's two things. B'terem kol yitzur nivra was also Malach. It was all there. La'eis nasa v'cheftzei kol. Then he has a name, Melech. Azai Melech. It becomes a name. It becomes something independent. It becomes self-contained. So what's creation? Creation in many ways is not new. It's just Hashem allowing this koyach, this chiyus, this shmoi to actually emerge. How? By creating the world. And each world has a different energy. But there's a whole ishtalshlus which begins with Chachma and comes down all the way to this world. Now suddenly, God has a name. What says he has a name? He has a name. What do we mean he has a name? People are talking about him. You could talk about him. He's identifiable. And why is this associated with Shmai? Because remember, that which people know about you usually has very little to do with you. Right? You know that, yeah? Ask most people, describe who I am. And they'll tell you things. It has very little to do with who you are. It's a mazel if there's even 1% similarity. Even 1%. Reb Mendel Haradoker, Reb Mendel of Vitebsk was a Talmud of the Maggid. So his Talmidim once asked him if he could show them a tzaddik nister. They wanted to see a tzaddik nister, a concealed tzaddik. So he said, Ich bin a tzaddik nister, I'm a tzaddik. They said, you're not nister. You're not concealed, you're revealed. Everybody knows you. He says, As achonach vei. Ob mein Zitkes wollt gewähnt, wie viel hat gewusst. Woe unto me if I was a tzaddik as much as you think I'm a tzaddik. In other words, the definition of my tzidkas would be defined by you. My tzidkas has nothing to do with what you know. It's completely different. Because what you describe of a person is only what you're capable of understanding. Even a person who's honest, most people, they don't even tell us who they are, so we mammers know nothing. But even a person who tells you, even what they tell you is not everything. Because they themselves can't always put it in words. Certainly what you want, so first of all, there's what they're capable of knowing themselves. Do you know yourself? How much do you know of yourself? Moshe, how much? How much percent? How much percent do you think you know of yourself? Really? How much? Huh? You say nothing. Epis, nothing. Something, no?
Willing to admit.
Huh? It's what do we know? Even Oisius only describes a certain element of the self. That which I could contain consciously and I understand and I'm comfortable with. Then there's what I could put in words to you. And then there's what you understand. How much you can understand only what your brain could contain. So you understand how many Tzimtzumim there are until you get to my name. So when you say my name means how you know me. That describes much more you than it describes me. You understand? When you talk about somebody, you're talking about yourself much more than you're talking about them. That's B'chala Kla. Whenever anybody talks about somebody else, they're not talking about that person. They're talking about themselves, the way they understood that person. I'll tell you once, there was one Sayyid who decided he was a brilliant artist. Some people decide that at some point in life. And he went to the Louvre, you know the Louvre in Paris, to this extraordinary art gallery. So this Chacham is standing as like a real art critic, and he's looking at one of the paintings, and he likes it, he doesn't like it. So the curator, the museum person says, listen, young man, he turns to the curator, he says, I'm trying to see if there's any depth here in this painting. It was only worth $55 million, but I'm trying to see if there's any depth there. He says, listen, young man, these pieces of art are not on judgment right now. They're not sitting on the throne of judgment. Okay, their brilliance has been established hundreds of years ago by people smarter than you or I. The one who's on judgment now is you, not the paintings. So you have to understand that when you're talking about somebody else, you're describing yourself sometimes more than you're describing the other person. So now we come back to the Shmoi. When you say Hashem's name, what's Pshat? Why is this called name? It's the way godliness is defined by creation. How much of godliness does that define? Only Shmoi. You understand? It's, again, we'll go back to this, I'll give a mashal. Rabbi Shlomo Yosef Zevin writes that the Rogatchover Gon was unbelievable communicator in Dibur, in speaking. In writing, nobody understands a word he says. In speaking, Rav Zevin says, a 5-year-old understood him. And it's sad because his writing skills, he couldn't write. He wasn't a communicator in writing. It's shreklech shver. And his chidushim are unbelievable. But if you don't know Bavli Yerushalmi with every Rashi and Tosfos Baal Peh, you can't begin even to start with him. You can't begin. You need somebody to help you with the Mar Mekaymis. That's besides understanding what he says. Just to see what he says. Forget about understanding. In speaking, a 5-year-old could understand him. So now imagine the Rogatchover is giving a shiur to a 5-year-old. He comes home and he tells his mother, I know the Rogatchover. I even know his brilliance. And he says over. But I ask you, how much did he get? He didn't even get 1%. Did he get part of his chachma? Yeah. He said what he knows. Right? But what he can get is only that which he could get. He doesn't know him. He knows that of him which he can understand. We speak about Hashem. What are we speaking about? We're not speaking about him, we're speaking about his name. In other words, that which we can identify based on who we are, not based on who he is. But that's pretty good. Because I am a reflection of the divine. You are too. So when I know me, I know God. But what do I know of God? I know that which I know because it's me. In other words, it's the chiyus of Hashem that gives chayus to creation. That's Shmoi. Where was all of this before? Where was that shiur of the Rogatchover before he spoke to the 5-year-old? It was there in him. Was he busy with it? No, because it was a tuffle of a tuffle of a tuffle that got his brilliance. right? He was going deeper. That's his mashal of the Ziv Hashemesh B'Shemesh. You have the sun. Let's call it the solar core. You have a light wave, right? A light wave is very powerful. It's a mashal that he often brings. A light wave is very powerful. I wish we would get some of it here. But imagine the light wave, the ray is coming into the room. It's moiridik. It lights up the whole world. It lights up the whole planet. Not the whole planet, half of the planet during daytime. Half of the other half of the planet by night, our night. What about that light wave in the solar core? If you go into the sun itself, you look at the sun, does it have this ray of light in the sun? Of course. If it's outside of the sun, it's also in the sun. But in the sun, it's not noticeable. That's shmoy. In the sun, you have everything. Every ray that comes to your house or to the planet is in the sun also. If it comes out of the sun, it's in the sun. But in the sun, it's not noticeable. Why? It's bottled in the source. It's submerged in the source. So before the world was created, where was Shmoy? Shmoy was part of who? It was all in him. What is creation? Creation is that the chiyus, the ziv, the ray of the sun comes out of the sun. And suddenly we look and we say, wow. Now if the sun would come into this room, you know what we would look like? Toast. But real toast. If less even. We would be toasted. Thank God the sun doesn't come in. We get a little ray so we can identify. It's a geschmack. We can be warmed by the sun. We can be illuminated by the sun. We don't get the sun itself. The sun itself is beyond. So Shmoi represents that level of energy. The way it's in him before, and creation is basically the yerida of that oil from the core to come out, that Hashem should be able to have a name. In other words, we should be able to talk about him. Why could we talk about him? Because the name, the energy becomes a name. In other words, it becomes restricted to the point that it constitutes the consciousness of creation. And because it constitutes the consciousness of creation, so therefore, we identify Hashem as our source of reality. So we're describing what we know as reality, and we say this is divine. Is it divine? Yes and no. It's absolutely divine, but Lagabi the core, it's really very limited. It's minuscule. You typhus what I'm saying? Everybody's typhus. It's a little bit of abstract stuff. You have to understand this. So now, this is the process called Me'ayin Liyesh. Why is it called ayin? Because it's like the light wave in the solar core. It doesn't have a yichus. You're not going to write about it. It's called ayin. Ayin doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Ayin means it doesn't have a separate identity outside of its source.
Undefinable.
Huh?
Undefinable.
It's undefinable. It's submerged there. It's ayin. It doesn't have separate significance. It's part of the mahus. It's back to that teacher. The pshat that he's telling the student, when it's in him, it doesn't have a separate significance. It becomes significant because for the student, it's like, wow. For him, it's tafel shabbatafel. The light wave in the solar core. For us, wow, we have light, we have warmth. In the solar core, yeah, you'll go to the Atlantic Ocean, yeah, and you'll point, you'll say, wow, there's a drop of water there. Ah, if you're in a desert and somebody brings you a cup of water, ooh, the cup of water is ganz chashev, right? But when you're in the Atlantic and you take a cup of water, you say, wow, look at this. There's an ocean. It's a drop in the ocean, right? The drop doesn't have a special chshivas. The cup doesn't have a unique significance. There's an ocean that extends hundreds and hundreds of miles. Never mind the depth of it. You go away from the ocean, you take a cup of water, it becomes significant. So Shmoi represents the Ratzin for the Bria, the koyach, that which will develop into the chiyus of the bria, and in every world it will be something else, until this world also has the energy. But here it's complete yesh, complete. You don't even know the source anymore. At least I look at the sun, I see the light wave, and I see it's connected. At least I go back to it. I see that it's shmoy. Right? The student is sitting by the teacher. At least he hears the teacher. Here you don't even see the connection. That's how far it goes away from the source. That's how eclipsed it is. That's Yerida, Tzara, Yerida. That's the Yerida Me'ayin Liyesh. Yesh, you would think, is an Aliyah. It's not. It's a Yerida. Ayin is a much bigger Aliyah. Why? Ayin means when you're not noticeable. You know why you're not noticeable? Because you are where you're supposed to be. You're not noticeable because you are where you're supposed to be, so you're not noticeable. It's good to be not noticeable. You understand? Verstehst? Huh? Well, the Rebbe had a chassid. He once said, it's an edel word because every commencement speech is the exact opposite. He said, I want to leave the world and it shouldn't even be noticeable that I was ever here. Shouldn't be noticeable I was here. Usually you say, make your mark, follow your dreams, make an impact, which is a good message. But his point was, he wanted ayin. Shouldn't even be, you shouldn't even know.
The muscle you mean about the body, the functional body.
Yes. A healthy body is when you don't feel it and it's in its right place. When you're in a really, really good place, you're in a state of ayin. Ayin doesn't mean you're nothing. Ayin means you're part of infinity. If you're part of infinity, you don't have to be noticed. We need to be noticed because we're not part of infinity. Right? Ayin doesn't mean, people say, ayin bista garnished. Ayin means you're garnished, you're nothing. Because you're infinite. We need to be something when we're not infinite. So who am I? So I have to be something. In the state of ayin, the light wave is not insecure. Oh, I'm such a nothing. It doesn't need to be anything. It's part of infinity. We have to become something when we have an identity crisis. When we leave the source. So you go me'ayin liyesh. That's the Yerida. What's the Aliyah? So what's the tachlis of this? So the biggest Yerida is not the neshama. The biggest Yerida is the Yerida of Hashem legabe Hashem. The Shmoi legabe Hu.
That's why he calls it the Aliyah Ikaris.
Yeah.
As compared with
right.
the neshama.
That's the primal Yerida and the primal Aliyah. All Yeridas in the world begin with this Yerida. Every person has...
the mother of all Yeridas.
Is the mother of all Yeridas. The mother of all crisis. The mother of all... I don't want to go there, but the mother of all depression. The mother of all angst. Very good, better. Angst. You know what angst is, Isaac? Huh? Angst. Not anxiety. Angst is a little better than anxiety. Angst is a madrega up.
It's existential anxiety.
It's angst is like, it's be'etzem. Right? It's a feltepus. Every void in life begins with this void. That means if you don't tackle this, you're not tackling anything. That's why people learn these stuff and they're like, was willst du? I can't get my marriage together. I can't pay my mortgage. I can't pay my tuition. My kids don't want to talk to me. I don't know if I'm coming or going. I'm miserable. Therapy has not been helping. Was hakst du mir am meisten with who, shmoy, rotzen, and this. But the truth is that this is the long way, but it's the short way. The short, long way is you tell a nice story, you tell a nice niggin, and you say all is good, and you have power. The long, short way is you have to go to the source of every angst. Every Yerida begins with this Yerida. If you don't tackle the core, all the symptoms will never be dealt with. If you tackle the core, you get the picture. Right? You come to a doctor and he looks at a symptom and he deals with the symptom, and he doesn't go back to the core of it. What did he help you? Helped you for a month, maybe it's going to come back. You didn't deal with it. When you deal with the angst of life, you have to go to the core of all angst. The core of all angst is the Yerida of Shmoi from who? That's the beginning of it all. Now, you say, Yena Yerida, Eichmena Yerida. Gracie Yerida. But this is the biggest Yerida. This is the deepest Yerida. The quantum leap from Ayin to Yesh. Ayin is where you don't have to be noticed. Why don't you have to be noticed? Because you're where you belong. You're where you belong. The child, not comfort zone today is used as negative, but it's like it would be. David HaMelech has a lashon in Tehillim. No, kegamul alei imoy, right? Imloishi visi v'daimamti. I know how to be silent like a child, an infant who's nursing in the bosom of its mother. And he's just there. And he or she is happy to be there. They're one with their source. Ayin. I don't have to be noticeable. I even can't be noticeable. He's kol in the moyer. That transition from hu to shmai, in order to create a world So it becomes a yesh, because it becomes the identity of a world. Each world, according to its madrega, that's the beginning of all Yeridus. The tachlis of that is to bring it back up. That's the Leviathan, Zeyatzar to Lasachik Boy, as we will see.
This class is brought to you by the Yeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.